Talking with the experts.
Hello and welcome to Talking with the Experts. And today my guest is Tracy Lamourie. I hope I said that correctly. And Tracy is going to speak to us today about how to elevate yourself to the top of your industry. Tracy is a high-profile international award-winning publicist and founder of Lamourie Media. A well-known, long-time advocate on a myriad of important worldwide issues and an award-winning international publicist working across industries, passionate about amplifying important messages and being a voice for those who most need one. Recognised by media around the world for her 20-year campaign that ultimately helped free an innocent man from death row, to her work getting clients major media attention. She has been frequently quoted in the international media on both human rights issues and as a public relations thought leader. Well, welcome, Tracy.
So much.
And how are you?
Very good. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm pretty well, thank you. Tell us a little bit more about the man from death row. That's very interesting.
Yeah, that's how I learned how to write a press release. That's absolutely part of my business story. People say, how did you get into PR? And I say, I never intended to. I was in marketing in my I guess it was my late 20s at the time. And my husband and myself, Dave Parkinson, we had done a radio show in the past on Toronto radio, CIUT. And this is a couple of years after that. So we no longer had that platform, but it was the early days of the internet. So we were doing what everybody was doing and kind of making a website and getting our voice out there and just sharing information about things that we thought was important. And somehow in making that and just looking online in the early days, we found information about a man named Jimmy Dennis who was innocent on death row in Pennsylvania. At that time, he was saying he was innocent and he was, pretty much calling for the attention of the world, but nobody was really paying attention. So he had paid a little bit of money to appear on some website that was basically a pen pal thing, and we were looking at anti-racist issues, obviously, but he basically said, I'm not looking for pen pal, I'm not looking for anything, this is my only avenue to the world to get my voice out there. So we thought, gee, how innocent could this guy be? Something called upon us to send him a letter for some reason, and he wrote back 18 pages of tightly written information about his case along with case documentation. Ultimately, it was so disturbing and clearly that he was innocent that we thought we have to do something to help. Didn't know what we could do, not being lawyers, just being young activists at the time. So we made a webpage, and in order to tell people about it, I literally, pre-Google, old Alta Vista days, I literally went online and learned how to write a press release on Google or on Alta Vista, sent it around the world. We ended up getting some media in Turkey and in Australia and a few random little places, and over the years built a campaign. Ultimately, he was released in 2017, not just because of our advocacy, but because along the line, a legal team that was looking for a case of factual innocence heard enough about it, there was enough noise made that they came on board, and after years and years of hard work, he was finally freed on evidence of innocence in 2017. And it's a fascinating story because it doesn't even end there. At the time he was arrested, wrongfully convicted, he was approaching, about to sign in the music industry, basically. And so the first thing he did when he came out is get back into the recording studio, record some epic music. So now I'm his publicist. He just released a song called Hate the Skin I'm In, third release. And it's a commentary on racism in America and the whole Black Lives Matter and the conversation that's happened in America over the last few months. So 20 years ago, he was on death row and nobody was paying attention. And my husband and myself were just entry-level marketing people. And 20 years on now, he's freed from death row. He's, on his way to an epic career, speaking with the likes of Ja Rule and Naughty by Nature on panels about police accountability and race in America and that kind of thing, and being lauded in Rolling Stone. And we have an literally international award-winning PR company, and none of us ever imagined any of that when we, learned to write a press release. So
Yay.
We laugh a little, all of us. We're still friends with Jimmy Dennis. We talk on the regular, and we always say, we didn't come this far to only come this far. It's not until he wins a Grammy And
Yeah,
we're sitting beside him, and we'll say the story's over. But
that's it. Well done. That is a epic story. And yeah, what a way to get started in the media, honestly. Wow.
to
So,
never planned that trajectory, right? For sure.
no, sometimes you just don't know where life's going to lead, do you?
Absolutely.
So
Follow your
you
heart.
no, so you have a thing in like believe in yourself and really believe in yourself and how does this I guess as a business owner or a CEO or whatever, how does that ethos sort of
So
bring them
that
a
leads
better
right into
company?
yeah, that leads right into, I mean, how do you, if you don't truly believe in yourself, and I mean really believe in yourself and your message, and believe, you're as good or better than your competitors, or that your idea is as good, especially with women, because often we don't realize that, or we don't demand that seat at the table, or if you don't really truly believe that you belong there, that your idea is worthwhile, that you should be quoted in the media, that why would anybody else believe that? Why would your potential customers choose you instead of your competition? Why would the media choose to interview you instead of your competition or somebody else who does what you do? So it's really about truly believing yourself. It's not just things they say that's easy to say but not do. I think that the reason I've been so successful, I was lucky enough to be empowered at a really young age by doing things like what I did with Jimmy Dennis in terms of we were like in our late 20s. We had no business getting involved with legal stuff. We had no business thinking we would have any impact, but we did have an impact. That one took 20 years. But even before that, I mean, um, I've been lucky enough to learn at a really young age to just do things. And now I translate that to business and I tell entrepreneurs the same. But it's the same thing no matter what it is, whether it's an activist thing or a personal thing or whatever. We just often just do not have the confidence in ourselves. We see people who do epic things as somebody else, the other people that we see on TV, and we don't really internalize that that person is just literally just like me. And I learned that more and more because now people are constantly calling me power woman. I'm on panels about power woman and thought leader and all that. And at the end of the day, I'm just a mom with a small business. We just incorporated, but it's still just a small business. And I get up every day with the same worries, the same stuff. And so does everybody else that we call a power woman, and all those other women, because I work across industries with hugely accomplished women, and they're all just like me, doing their thing, realizing they had a thing that they could do. And the only difference that separates me and them from the people not doing those things is that they have not really internalized and realized that they can do it, that they have every right to do it, and that they're just as good as the other guys doing it, and they shouldn't wait for somebody to invite them, but just to put themselves out there, and that all really comes with believing in yourself and not being afraid.
Yeah. And so how does one learn how to find existing media opportunities that they can insert themselves into?
So there's a whole bunch of services. Like one of them is probably, the way that we met. There's podcast services, for example. If you don't have an existing media profile, but you really know your stuff and you think that you'd be a good guest, you can start by, and everything is about the pitch. Everything's a pitch. So first of all, you have to write a little concise paragraph or two that explains why you're an expert in what you do and everything. But once you've done that, essentially look for those opportunities. There's podcast services, there's services where journalists and publicists or any, the communications team from any company, or yourself, if you're an entrepreneur who has time to go and look through them, can find these opportunities. There's several services. Even there's a big one in Australia called Source Bottle, and that's international. If you look at Source Bottle, there's media putting out opportunities all the time. Ticker TV looking to interview businesses, and NBC, Oprah. I've gotten clients literally in Oprah and Good Housekeeping and Reader's Digest, just following those where they were, a reporter's assigned an article, they're looking for people to be in them. So look for those. Be a source on Source Bottle is a good one. Harrow's another one. Now those things will take you time to look and to craft your pitch. So I always say too, you can definitely do that on your own, but any entrepreneur who has a marketing budget, consider having a PR budget. If not all year long, do it for a month or do it for 3 months and see what kind of opportunities your publicist brings to you, and become more familiar with, what media is like and what they ask of you and all that. And honestly, in 2020 and beyond, as things become even more digital, if you're not looking for opportunities to speak about what you're doing, if you're not literally investing some time in media and in, or writing and getting yourself published, or not a book, but even just, articles in a paper or in a blog, your competition is. So you're absolutely falling behind now. It's almost not an extra anymore. It's almost like if you are in any kind of field where and anybody's an expert. I mean, you can get away with it if you're in a service, some service, and you don't necessarily have to do that. But even, I mean, no matter who you are, real estate, lawn care, I don't care what you do, you should be looking for opportunities to amplify your voice and talking about it, because somebody in your industry is, and they're the ones that are going to elevate themselves and be called on to meet more medias, more customers, more credibility, more, depending on what your goals are.
Yeah, and so moving on from that, or going, forward, I guess, tying in with, how does one write to prevent their emails and media releases getting chucked in the bin or getting put in the trash?
That's a big one, especially for entrepreneurs. You have to realize the big key is to realize the difference between editorial and advertorial. And I'm forever having to educate my clients on this, because no matter how fantastic your product is, if you go and watch, or what you're doing is, if you go and watch the news, which is a 22-minute broadcast, how often do you see them talk about, oh, by the way, there's a new product? They don't. Or look, this new lawyer is doing something, they don't. So you have to understand that you're not asking for, when you approach them asking for like free airtime, which is basically what you're doing if you're not understanding the difference between editorial and advertorial. They're just going to either be kind enough to direct you to the advertising department, or just completely ignore you. So you have to realize first, before you reach out to them, is this a story? Imagine that you're the editor. So your job is not to ask them for something, free ad space or free, media space. Your job is to provide them with content that is actually good content for their audience. And then beyond that, so you have to know the audience, you have to understand what would be newsworthy to them, and then you have to frame, what you have. And so normally, newsworthy isn't, hey, we have a new product, or this is a great thing we're doing, but you can always, you are an expert in whatever you're doing. So a good example of this is if a product is a book. So I have a lot of author clients, but it doesn't have to be a book. It could be a widget, right? So if the book is the product, so I can pitch this to anybody who talks about books, to people who do book reviews and all that. But that's a small percentage of media. 90% of media is not going to report on a new book, no matter what it is about. So how do you get that person in this book into the rest of that media? Well, she's an expert. In this case, it's a book about etiquette. So how can I get this person? Because anytime they mention that she's an expert in etiquette in media, how is she an expert? They're going to mention her book, which is the calling card about why she's an expert, right?
Yeah.
So when this client came to me, Tony Dupree, I didn't know anything about the etiquette space. And, to me, etiquette was something, Emily Post 100 years ago.
Yes.
So our question was, well, but she speaks to corporate, and she's about how it affects you in business. And then we thought, gee, how can we make it a story? We ended up getting her pitched in so many stories from, again, she was in Reader's Digest a couple times, the Chicago Tribune, a whole bunch, on things like, we framed stories like, what's the etiquette of traveling with friends, or the etiquette of staying in an Airbnb, or, and then she was able to respond through things like Source Bottle when reporters were doing articles on, what are things that used to be considered rude but aren't anymore, or what are rude things when but there's been so much that you wouldn't think, if I just said to you, how do we get an etiquette expert out there? We'd think, oh, about, eating or something.
Yeah, that's what I would have thought. Yeah.
But actually, we've been able to get her more placements than a ton of other clients, because really, instead of being stuck on the word etiquette thing, well, what does she do? She advises people on what? On like feelings, on
Good
how to
manners,
on how to be, So that's the way that goes. I mean, and that was just one example, but I mean, if she was selling widgets, it'd be the same thing.
Yeah.
She's an expert on widgets. So if I can't get the widget in the news, I can get her to talk about something that we don't know about widgets, or that's something that we should know that the mainstream doesn't know, but that the experts know, and she could write an op-ed about it. Or so by creating her as the expert, within the same breath, they're talking about the product.
Yeah.
So it's a way to get the product or the book in a place where they wouldn't otherwise talk about the product or the book. So
Yeah.
no matter who
Okay.
you are or what you do, you can do that.
Yeah. So
But remember, the subject line is key, because you know how many emails you and I and everybody in the world gets a day. So
yes.
imagine how many emails the editor gets. So if your subject line isn't convincing, they're not even opening the email to see your news.
No, that's correct. Yes. Yes. Now, pitching. I actually, and the advice that you give here will be very helpful for me because I have to give a pitch tonight. So, yeah. So tell me, how can someone actually go about pitching their business without sounding salesy?
Without sounding salesy? And are we
Yeah,
talking to media or to investors or to just to anybody? The
just
whole,
to anybody.
whoever, both, right?
Yeah,
So I think without sounding salesy, I think, being genuine is everything. Obvious, like, you should be passionate about what you do. And if you're passionate about what you do, and you believe in yourself, or back to that, that's going to shine through. Like, if anything, when I talk about this stuff, I don't know if I sound like I'm selling PR, but I'm super passionate about it. I'm super passionate about, what it can do for businesses, you know what I mean? What
yeah,
I'm not even businesses, because I'm not even super business minded. I'm more about people and messaging. And, I only take on clients that I either like them personally or I really like what they're doing. And so, when I speak to entrepreneurs, you're passionate, you're doing what you're doing for a reason. So let that shine through and be genuine. I was in another podcast earlier today, and we were talking about, I do not believe in that fake it till you make it. I think that's bad advice. I say don't dream it, be it. Better advice from the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
yeah. That is good advice.
It's way better. Don't just dream about it and pretend to be it. Just start it. Like, if that's what you want to be it. Just start it. Take the first steps, and then you're actually in the game. You don't have to fake it. I get what they're saying with that. What they mean by that is, hopefully, is, dress like you belong in the scene. So for sure, like, dress like that what's appropriate to be there in the scene that you want to be in and all that. But always be genuine. You don't have to fake it. Don't pretend. People like to work with people that they like. So, present yourself, present your idea, put yourself out there. You're competent, be proud of what you're doing. And I found the key, actually 20 years ago, before I even went into PR, I noticed, when I was a telemarketer in my late 20s, and then I decided that I wanted to, work from home, because I'd been lucky enough to have a telemarketing position for a while, working from home. I said, I'm not going to ever go back into an office. So at that point, that was not the norm. This was like the late 90s. So it was very rare to find companies that would let you do that. So I would answer, telemarketing ads and convince them to let me work from home, basically. So I had to convince them, A, to hire a telemarketer, me, as opposed to everybody else, and then further to do something they weren't even thinking of doing and let me do it from home. But I noticed going into that, everything is attitude, because the second I stopped, and this is way before I had a, impressive PR career behind me. Now, obviously, I talk to clients. I'm not applying for a job anymore. They're usually coming to me, and it's more of a friendly relationship. But back in the days when I had to apply for, jobs, as soon as I switched from, like, hey, I'm applying to the job, to the attitude of, and it's not arrogance, it's just, knowing my competence, to, like, really almost saying to them, no, I'm the one you need to hire. This is like, clearly, if this is a position for me and you need me because this is what I'm going to do. It's the very attitude. I think it's just the attitude, because I actually believed that if these guys don't hire me, I don't know what they're thinking, and I'm going to go on somewhere else, And then from that, even when I was a telemarketer in those days, the respect and the relationships that developed between me and at those times, my employers at those times, changed, because I was different here. I'm realizing, no, I'm not down here and they're up here. I'm here, and I'm telling them, this is what you need. This is what I can do. I'm the one to do it for you. If you need it done,
Yeah.
and it maybe not. You have to be careful the way you say that. I wasn't always verbal. So that's more your attitude than in what you're verbally saying, right?
Yeah.
But if you really believe that and you're approaching life that way, then you're not in a position where you're, asking for something. You're in a position where you have something to offer, and you're offering it. And if they don't take it, you're confident with yourself that you'll find, there'll be another media, or there'll be another investor or whatever, because that what you have on the table, what you bring to the table is, of huge value. And especially as women, we have to remind ourselves of that a lot. And I know that because I work with, hugely accomplished women across industries who have incredibly impressive resumes, and they don't always see themselves the way that everybody else sees them.
Yeah. So could you give an example of a good pitch?
It's hard to kind of do that in a general way because it all depends, it's all very story, but essentially you just have to remember a good pitch is giving the media, it all comes down to giving the media what they need, not what you want them to do. So really you have to understand very well, what the audience is, and understand what a news broadcast does, and don't try to give them something they're not going to do. And another a good pitch these days too is to understand that a lot of newsrooms are understaffed, or under pressure or whatever, so have less journalists. So in the old days you could just send in a press release and think, oh, they'll assign somebody. But I found to be really effective this year is, along with sending a press release, I also say to them, if I understand it would be great if you wanted to do an article, if you want to interview my client, but also if you don't have the capability of that, I don't say capability, but I mean, if you don't have the resources for that right now, we'd be happy to offer you a royalty-free article. So, I'll write the article, they can print it. So and if I was doing that, I'd be writing it as an article, like in my journalist side, where it's actually more newsy, again, because that's when you have to know the difference. If I was going to do that, if I said, I'm going to write you a royalty-free article, and then I gave them what looked like a press release, which was all just promotional material, that's not going anywhere. But if it was an event or something, they're not going to print that. But if it was an event or something, and I can write an article the way the journalist would, a proper article that they can just submit, royalty-free, they don't have to pay me, they don't have to assign a writer, then it's in there when it wouldn't otherwise been in there. So that's a good tip too, is give them like, prepared content into with what they like, find out because almost every newspaper, whether it's a weekly or a big, international daily, almost every single paper will take an op-ed, an article from a guest expert. And sometimes they like it better if it's not somebody who's, been printed 500 times. Because it's supposed to be for the ordinary person or the expert.
Okay. That's good advice. And a lot of businesses could take that on board if they want to get their name, their product, their service, their whatever out into the media. I don't think a lot of people sort of think that way.
Entrepreneurs almost never do it. I notice like very often, like I'm almost constantly educating entrepreneurs about it, because we all think about marketing, right? But we don't think of ourselves as experts that. And again, like I literally see every day incoming requests for real estate agents, for financial experts, so just like, general people who have general expertise, people, divorce lawyers, all these people out of media is constantly reaching out because they've been assigned an article and they, just trying to get the expert to fill it. So and if anybody wants to expand on that or anything, I'm happy to. And this isn't to boost business, but even just I'm happy to give anybody a little 15-minute call if they want to understand it more. I'm happy to do that, just because I'm really passionate about entrepreneur. I don't care where they are. I work internationally, so around the world is fine. But just people really don't understand that that's really something they can access, and do it.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Build your brand.
Perfect advice. Well, Tracy, thank you so much for your time today. It's been very enlightening, I must say.
Thank you.
So if people can reach you at a website or Facebook?
All of that. My website is Lamourie Media. My last name it's like Lamour, like French love with an I.
Yeah, I've got that here. And you can find it on
Lamourie Media. And on Instagram is Tracy Lamourie PR Media, and I live on Facebook, Tracy Lamourie. And so I'm happy to hear from anybody who hears this.
Beautiful. All right, Tracy, you enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
And we'll talk again.
Enjoy tomorrow.
I will. All right, take care.
And good luck on your pitch. Bye-bye.
Thank you.